Hey everyone, welcome to Sociastrology. Today we are going to look at the year 2025 on a personal level. We're going to look at this from the context of your rising or sun signs to see how this year is going to play out for you personally. So we're going to go through the major transits for the year to decipher the most important factors for you. So we're going to look at Pluto in Aquarius, which has just permanently moved in November, and look at how that's going to play into the fact that Neptune, Uranus, and Saturn are all changing signs this year. So they're going to be in different houses in your chart than they have been for ages. And then we also will look at Jupiter and its ingress into Cancer to look at where that benefit and luck, goodwill is coming through for you next year. And we will also look at this big epic Mars retrograde process that we have just started going through and will be playing out for the whole first half of the year. And then we will look at the nodal axis and its sign change into Pisces and Virgo to see how the eclipses are likely to play out for you, with eclipses in Pisces, Virgo, and Aries within the context of your own personal chart. So this should play out. This should work perfectly for your rising sign. It could probably also hold for your sun sign as well, but also for a detailed description of what to expect in the coming year, do feel free to book a personal reading. What I do is I look at your natal chart, I go deeply into all of that, but then I use a lot of different timing techniques to see which eclipses are most likely to play out in a very poignant way for people. Whether or not their zodiacal releasing indicates that certain alignments are likely to play out and manifest in a specific way or not, and all of the transits to your own personal planets and so forth. So to really dig into this, I definitely recommend a personal reading, but this should hold really perfectly for your rising sign, and it will probably also apply for your sun sign as well. Additionally, for a mundane astrology general overview of the coming year, politically, historically, socially, I just published last week a really epically long video about that. So if you have the time and you are interested in how this year is also likely to play out on the world stage, I recommend checking that out too. And other than that, if you are new here, do please consider subscribing for future videos. I do topics like this, so the mundane astrology on the one hand, and then I tend to look at the exact same alignment or time frames from a personal standpoint and take it through all of the signs. So if that's something that is of interest to you, then do please feel free to subscribe. I would love to have you here for future videos. And if you don't mind hitting the thumbs up button, I would greatly appreciate that. It helps the video to spread around. It helps the channel to grow. So I am deeply, deeply grateful for all of that. And without any further ado, let's get into your reading. For Libra, we have Pluto in your 5th house this year. We have Saturn and Neptune moving into your 7th house and Uranus moving into your 9th house. So with Pluto in your 5th house of creative outlets, of children, of your hobbies, of sport, of things that you enjoy to engage in, Pluto transforms that. It brings it into a space in which these topics are of much greater import to your life. So there could be a deepening of a relationship with children or the start of a family here. There could also be some challenges with children that are not the easiest to resolve and may be psychological in nature that need to be worked through between you two. Additionally, in terms of casual romantic relationships, this can have a major deepening effect of those relationships, but this can also have those relationships impacting you much more strongly as well, as though they have more of a kind of control over you. But again, with this being a place of creativity and hobbies as well, this can definitely deepen your involvement in a hobby or a creative outlet. This may be an urge that you're feeling that you really need to do something for you, to do something that expresses your own vision, your own imagination, your own ideas into a material form. And this is going to be here for 20 years as it moves through this house. So this is something that is coming up now, but is going to have a very long amount of time to increase and develop in the coming years. Now, additionally, in the seventh house of relationships, your partners, other people, legal matters, we have Saturn and Neptune. And these are quite different energies for the most part. Saturn tends to be quite reserved, cautious. It tends to require a lot of effort be put in the area of life that it's affecting. And for you, that is other people. So you're likely to feel like there is a lot more effort that's required by your relationships and that they are much more serious during this period of time as well. Now, Neptune, on the other hand, can be very idealistic, very romanticizing. It can indicate rose-colored glasses with regard to other people when it's in the seventh house. And it can also introduce confusion, delusions even, and deception in some of the worst cases. So a very different energy there. But where these two do come together is in the sense of sacrifice. Both of them often feel the need to sacrifice a part of oneself in order to serve some higher goal. And they're also very wise together. There's a great depth of knowledge that comes with these two when they come together. And Neptune is also introducing that spiritual tone to your relationship. So especially when it comes to romantic relationships, we see that taking on several new dimensions. This is a deepening of relationships on many, many different levels, and possibly a relationship reaching a level that you haven't experienced before. So in the sense of sacrifice for some higher goal, you can definitely encounter people that are needing help or guidance where you're needing to step in and help them out. Sorry, I just realized that I didn't have my cursor on the screen before. So you may feel the need to step in for someone who needs some help. Now, this could also potentially be a child that needs some help and you're needing to offer that to them. Now, Saturn can also have us ending things. It can be a closing kind of factor. So if you have found that there have been power games within a relationship, Pluto tends to introduce power dynamics to the relationships that it affects. If you've been wearing rose-colored glasses, that may actually become more clear, ironically. Neptune tends to lead us by our feelings, so it's really imperative to follow our gut when we're being led in important areas of our lives by Neptune. But ultimately, this can definitely represent the dissolution of a difficult relationship, one which has been challenging, one which you feel has a level of control over you that's not quite healthy. But additionally, with both Neptune and Saturn here as well, this can have you feeling the need to define a relationship, because Neptune here is going to be introducing a lot of factors and elements within relationships that are not quite clear, where maybe you don't know where you stand exactly. And Saturn's not going to be comfortable with that. Saturn will really want to define terms here. So there may be a relationship that defies that, and you feel the need to define it rather. And you may also wind up finding that you're not quite able to define that. And you'll have to ask yourself if that is something that is comfortable for you. If there's a lack of trust there, then Neptune and Saturn in the seventh is going to be very uncomfortable with that. Additionally, you could find people that have a similar attitude toward the world as you do during this period of time. So Saturn and Neptune together, another overlap that they have is they both represent the world in different ways. So in a very material, practical sense with Saturn, and then in the abstract, global sense of the universal of our experience with Neptune here. And when they come together, there's a desire to, again, define that, to define what Neptune is even representing here, which has a lot more to do with the humanity of the world than strictly the quantifiable aspects of it. So you could certainly be running across people that are shaping your worldview and that are contributing to it, and that you either in turn or even absent that impact of them wind up agreeing with and feel that you have a very similar worldview there. This is Saturn and Neptune together is low-key very political. Let me put it that way. So with Uranus now, the planet of major change, of disruptions, of sometimes erratic things, hectic changes, even a little bit chaotic, but deeply fascinated with new subjects. This is in your ninth house of philosophy, worldview, religion, travel, foreign cultures, publishing, putting one's ideas out into the world. So with Uranus here, you are actually very likely to have a huge change in your worldview. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's being impacted by someone that you are interacting with around this time or that you're learning from. So you may find yourself with a new philosophy, with a greater fascination for philosophy, for spirituality, religion, all of those practices, and even with a political ideology or something along those lines as well. You could find that there are surprising opportunities that arise with regard to travel. So an opportunity may just come up and you decide, yeah, I'm going to jump on that. That experience is likely to have a strong impact on you and your ideas. You may also find that if you are, say, a writer or you engage in an artistic medium, that you're wanting to put that out into the world. And so this can also represent you for the first time putting yourself out there in a way that can make you feel pretty vulnerable, but just know that there's a lot of power behind what it is that you're doing, how it is that you're interacting with people, and what it is that you're thinking and putting out there. So try not to feel too shy about that. And yes, additionally, this could be a fascination with specifically an esoteric topic as well, something that not a lot of people are into. But these planets, they're lining up in these outwardly focused signs here, or houses here rather. So what we have here is two houses that are being impacted, the fifth and the ninth, that are really bound up with who you are and how you express that. So this is likely to become very, very important. Again, if you're a creative type, I would put your work out there. I think that the results of that will be pretty surprising. Additionally, try to interact with people in a way that is of great integrity, because these two also kind of won't let you get away with too much. So definitely don't engage in any deception with regard to other people yourself. But with these two together, if you're acting in integrity, this can also really increase your influence over others. So if you are looking for clients or business partners, again, those like-minded people who may have a greater interest in what it is that you're putting out there, this can be really, really helpful to that end as well, and can have you coming off as very knowledgeable and respectable and authoritative here as well. So this looks quite good. I think that these transits are, for the most part, better than what you've been dealing with previously. Now, just to define the periods of time I already mentioned, Pluto is going to be here for about 20 years till 2044. Neptune will be in your seventh house until 2039, so about 15 years. Saturn will be here for about 3 years, and Uranus will be in your ninth house, which I do have to say is quite lovely. Although, if you're traveling overseas, just be a little bit careful for accidents. Make sure that you're highly aware of your surroundings with regard to pickpockets or just like tactics that people use that maybe you're not super familiar with if you are in a foreign land. Because this can be shock, surprises, things like that can arise overseas. But this will be here until about 2033, so for about 7 years. Now, I do also have to point out there's going to be a few months at the end of 25 and a few months in the beginning of 26 where all three of these placements are going to scooch right back to where they've been previously. So that could feel like it's throwing you into the past a bit. I would interpret that as just look back on what you have learned over the past decade or so. Try to really put that into practice. Maybe write those things down just to make sure that you are very consciously aware of what it is that you've learned in the past 10 years or so, with potential shocks or surprises within relationships, intimate partnerships, commitments, contracts, things that you have shared with others, and then also in terms of your tasks and your work. That may have been very much up in the air. But both of those matters, annoying as they may have been over the past decade or so, what has it taught you? I think it's really good for us to meditate on the past decade as these planets here move back into their old positions. And then they will be permanently moving back in around spring of 26 as well. So in 25, we're just kind of dipping our toes in the water, looking at what the coming decade or two is going to be looking like for us. And we're getting a preview of that. So with that said, let's look at Jupiter and Mars. So the reason I want to look at Mars is Mars rarely goes retrograde. It's the least common retrograde planet in terms of frequency. And when it does go retrograde, it does it epically. So typically it'll stay in a sign, it'll transit a sign for about a month or so, no big deal. It's a little annoying to have because Mars, though it can increase energy and motivation along certain lines, it can also bring challenges, conflict, drama, people who stir things up, breakages of things, injuries even in some cases. And overall, it can be an irritant of all sorts. And so when it goes through a retrograde period, that lasts for like 8 months and it stays in two signs. And boy, these retrograde periods are really tiring, but we will get through it. It's going to be, for the most part, the first half of the year. And we have actually a pretty nice alignment along those lines that I'll get into in a second as well. But we have the most of this from January through the very end of April. We'll have Mars in Cancer here in your 10th house, and that's causing annoyances with your career. So there could be issues that come up with regard to your career, your life direction, your reputation, the purpose that you feel, basically what it is that you want to do out in the world with your life and your ideas around that. So if that's been being challenged in any way, try not to worry about that too much at all. Try to see possibly even if any moves that you're making around that, if you can delay a bit, because what we have coming up is that this will scooch finally out of Cancer again at the very end of April. So we're talking pretty much May. And then in the second week of June, we have Jupiter moving into Cancer. And Jupiter is absolutely wonderful for your career, like promotion, just enjoying your career, generally speaking, encountering really helpful, kind people. It can also just be really lucky. Like things just fall into place. Things tend to fall into your lap. Jupiter loves to say yes, especially when it is in Cancer, and especially when something that you want is heartfelt and is in alignment with the order of things, so to say. So I would expect benefits, recognition for sure, coming from your career, the development and improvement of your career. But also, again, it's that feeling, it's that enjoyment and just feeling like you're on the right path and being given some real breadcrumbs to follow, where it's not like, is this a good direction for me or not? It's just very clear that it is. And there's some interesting opportunities that just present themselves to you. And this is all around your career. What's nice about this too is, as I mentioned, it's June of 25 that we finally get this, but it's going to go on for about a year for you to have Jupiter in this very important angular house that has to do with your life purpose. So June 25 through June 26, a whole year where Jupiter is in your 10th house. That is an absolutely wonderful transit that you'll be experiencing there. Now, when Mars then moves into Leo, it will still be going through part of its retrograde shadow because it started at 6 degrees of Leo. So likely it's going to be more impactful than usual. It's also going to be in this sign because it's just gaining its speed back from that retrograde period. It's going to be here for about, I think it's a month and a half or so, which is long for Mars to be somewhere. So that can bring in some little issues with colleagues. This is the 11th house of friends, organizations, the groups that you're involved with, your hopes and your goals. And it also represents networking in our careers, the things that help our careers. So with a bit of a problem there, you could find there are hiccups basically in the environment and within the resources of your career. So I would really expect for this Jupiter transit to start really being felt cleanly by the time this Mars moves on. So we're talking pretty much the middle toward the end of the summer. You should be really seeing the benefits of this, while the impact of Mars on your career and your social groups has finally then moved on and cleared up. So again, in terms of timing, I would wait a bit. I would certainly wait until the second half of the year if you're wanting to make any moves or anything. Especially also if you're launching a business, because remember we had Uranus in the 9th. You could be deciding like to publish something, to put something out there, to start a business or something like this. If you're wanting to do that, I wouldn't rush it just because the energies are looking a little bit better later in the year for you along those lines. And we definitely don't want to catch then, sorry, I keep going back. We definitely don't want to catch Mars in this house at the launch of something. So, of course, just a shameless plug. I do electional astrology if you're looking for a really good time to launch something or initiate a project. But you don't need to do that. Just knowing that Jupiter's in that 10th, that will take care of the most of that for you. So let's look at the eclipses. So we have the nodal axis here. And what this is it's borderline physical. It's mathematical points that represent the intersection of where throughout the year, of course, the sun goes more toward, from a very geocentric perspective, goes more toward the northern hemisphere and then the southern hemisphere and back, and that carries through a year. Now, the moon does that monthly, and the nodal axis here is the intersection point where those two come together. And because that alignment of the sun and the moon have come exactly together with regard to the earth, then what we get is eclipses. So these are the points from which we define eclipses. The closer that an eclipse takes place to this point, the more total the eclipse will be. So that's what we're looking at when we're looking at the nodal axis. And there's the north node, which tends to be more oriented toward things that are coming in, things that are growing within your life, experiences that you should lean toward in order to mature and to grow. And then we have the south node, which tends to be things that come a little bit more naturally to us, especially in terms of natal astrology. But I'll point out here how this also applies, that we shouldn't over rely on and that we probably need to release along those lines for continued growth, maturation, so on and so forth. So with this aligned with the North Node in your 6th house and the South Node in your 12th house, again, you may find that, like with Uranus in your 9th, that you're releasing some philosophy that has been very natural to you for a while because there's something else that's coming in. And so the 12th house and the 9th house have a huge amount of overlap. We also run into philosophy, spirituality, religion, the greater world, foreign topics, even travel. We can catch a lot of that in the 12th house as well. But it's also a place of isolation, things that we need to release that we can tend to hang on to, patterns, subconscious conditioning, our subconscious in a psychological sense. So with the South Node there's something you're releasing along those lines. So it could be certainly philosophical, or it could be a matter of conditioning and those kind of subconscious psychological patterns that we don't always actively engage in, but that are always playing out through us, so to say. Now, with the North Node in your 6th house, this is a house of work, tasks, employees, coworkers, errands, chores, your health, and your daily routine, generally speaking. So there's an orientation toward that. And try not to think of this as quite as annoying as it's been in recent years, because notice that the nodal axis, I forgot to mention this, but the nodal axis is always retrograde. So it goes clockwise around the wheel. Planets go counterclockwise around the wheel. So what we've had is right at these late degrees of Pisces, we actually had Neptune and Saturn and the North Node come together. So they're trading spaces, basically. The North Node is coming to deal with whatever Saturn and Neptune has been dealing with recently, and Saturn and Neptune are now coming to deal with what the North Node has been dealing with. So what's nice about this is, for one thing, eclipses are not always the most fun, but they are a major growth vector for us. And additionally, they can actually be pretty nice. They can actually be pretty positive as well, where there's, again, a kind of transformation, a kind of shakeup that is necessary. And so as Saturn and Neptune are moving out of this house, where I was mentioning earlier, that may have been a source of annoyance for you in recent years, because it's not the most fun place, especially to have Neptune, where you're like, what the heck is it even that I'm supposed to be doing right now? And why can I not seem to get together a really solid routine that just holds and applies? So the North Node is coming into this place after you have learned a lot of whatever it was that Neptune needed to say about your routine, and you're much more able then to sort that out for yourself. Now, additionally, there is health implied in this house too. So I didn't mention it before, but that may have even been an issue for you, where you had a mysterious kind of health concern, like some chronic fatigue, something, or maybe something that looked like a thyroid thing, or like an immune system thing, where it's really, really difficult to get an actual diagnosis. And so you can feel like you're up in the air with things like that quite a bit. Maybe you did know exactly what the problem was, but that should be letting up a bit now. And I think that these eclipses are coming through to really make what Neptune has had unclear, to make that finally clear for us. Now, what else the North Node says here about health is that this should be a focus for you in the coming years, just for improvement, just for physical development, well-being, taking care of yourself. And especially, that whole like chronic fatigue, immune system thing, that could totally be something that you've been experiencing recently. And with the South Node in the 12th house, this is kind of those weird physical issues that are the so-called like invisible illnesses and things like this. So releasing that. It looks to me like if you've had an issue like that, it should be clearing up around this time. Now, another way that it's really good to utilize this is, again, just basic things like diet, exercise, just making sure that you're taking care of yourself. It's likely to go a lot further in its effects than usual when we have the eclipses taking place in this area as well. Now, you're also oriented then and requested to pay attention to your routine, toward those tasks, being actively involved. Try and take hold of that now. Because again, you've had a pain in the rear transit here for a while. It's probably not in a state where it's sorted out. And I think that you would feel a lot more comfortable if it were. And so you're being asked to really look at that around this time. And that would be a really wonderful way to experience these eclipses, is to put some focused intention on, I want to create more of a steady routine for myself. Now, you could also find around the eclipse times, which is going to be Pisces season and Virgo season, spring and autumn, the beginnings of those seasons, a change of job. Or if you work for yourself, something coming up that represents a change with regard to your employees. Now, there could even be not just a change of job in the sense of, for instance, you leaving a company and working at another company. This could be, for instance, also coworkers. If coworkers are let go, then if you are taking on some of their responsibilities, then that would also represent a change in your job. So that's something that I would definitely expect to be coming up around this time. Now, also with the South Node in the 12th house, there is a need to release fears, work through those subconscious blocks, work through those subconscious patterns of conditioning. And so that would be a really wonderful way to utilize this transit as well. Now, the nodes will be here for about a year and a half. But what's interesting is we're actually not getting any solar eclipses in Pisces, which is a bit of a trip. But what that means for 25 is that in the springtime, on March 29th, we're actually picking up one last eclipse in Aries. So that'll be in your 7th house. So I would expect in the springtime for there to be developments in relationships, maybe a little bit of a shakeup along those lines, and a reorientation of priorities with regard to yourself versus others. It's probably going to lean a little bit toward others because it's the North Node that eclipse is running off of. And those relationships may require a little bit more effort as well. Now, if you're involved in any sort of legal matters or you have a contract that's kind of troubling you, you could see some resolution around that, especially if those things started, say, around 2023. So hopefully that goes very well for you. But I think that is pretty much what I have for you, Libra. So with all of that said, I hope you have an absolutely beautiful year. And again, if you want to go into this in more detail, do feel free to book a personal reading. I would love to look into how all of these transits are playing out in your own individual chart. And again, if you don't mind hitting the thumbs up button, greatly, greatly, greatly appreciate that. And feel free to subscribe for future videos. I would love to have you here. And yeah, other than all of that, I again hope you have an absolutely beautiful year, and I will talk to you all soon. Be good. Bye.